Hello and welcome to the June 1st podcast. My name is Ethan Moriarty, and today I'd like to welcome you to this pilot episode and thank you for tuning in. To start off, I'm going to be introducing myself and then talking about June 1st severe weather research, my project that I've been working on for the past several years, and kind of giving you an idea of what I'm about as we move forward so you have a firm understanding of who I am and where I'm coming from when it comes to future episodes, and kind of give you a feel for what is to come down the line. To start, my name is Ethan Moriarty. I am a young mechanical engineer who has had a fascination for weather since, as long as I can remember. When I was real little, my parents had always advocated for STEM education for myself and my brother. So I was always had books and other, medias available to me that were about the sciences. So I grew up with like Bill Nye the Science Guy and National Geographic books and stuff like that, just kind of always looking at the STEM fields, so sciences and stuff in terms of natural disaster, which really gripped me, obviously, becoming a weather fanatic, and stuff along the lines of engineering. I was always obsessed with vehicles and any mode of transportation, boat, train, plane, you name it, I loved it. So I had always been very drawn to the STEM fields. Weather in particular was always something that really grasped me. I had a book that was about tornadoes and another one about hurricanes, and I think it was very appealing to me from a young age just because it's a very fascinating and almost mesmerizing kind of phenomena, especially tornadoes. And it wasn't that difficult for me to kind of find this real passion for it. The moment I found something that I was really enjoying, I would just latch onto it and make it something that I would love to kind of follow. So from that young age, I really grasped the idea of severe weather being something that I was really drawn to. And sure enough, I was watching local on the 8s and the local meteorologists on the TV go over the weather maps, and I really absorbed myself into that kind of love for weather just through the medias and replicating it myself. I have videos as a young child, around 4 years old, pretending to be a meteorologist. I had a United States of America placemat that I had taped up to the wall, and I had like a magic wand or something, and there's me and my 4-year-old Beatles bowl cut haircut with this pointer magic wand thing, and I took like a piece of paper and I drew all these different symbols that they would show on the TV to indicate different types of weather. Like on the local on the 8s, they had like their thunderstorm logo, which was this kind of funny looking anvil cloud with the lightning bolts coming out of it, like the old school early 2000s local on the 8s graphics, and I tried to replicate them the best I can, drawing them, and then I would tape them to various locations on this United States of America placemat. So that's what I ended up doing, was kind of replicating, a weather map just from what I had available. And my parents took the high 8 camcorder, so the high 8 tapes, and we'd, shoot my little weather segment with this camera, and then we would rewind it, hook it up to the TV, and watch it back. And I could see myself on the TV giving a weather report. And for me, that is the, it was like, realizing a dream almost. As I got a little bit older, I don't think I necessarily wanted to go into broadcast meteorology as much, but I definitely still enjoyed the creative side that came to weather. I went up to Burlington on vacation, Burlington, Vermont, and there's a museum there along Lake Champlain, some sort of science museum. I'm not exactly sure if I remember the exact name of it, but they had another green screen on set, or at the museum, I should say, and they had this like weather segment that you could do and pretend to be a meteorologist. So obviously I did that, and I still have the DVD of that came out of it. I don't know if my parents had to pay anything to get that DVD. I'm sure they did, but I definitely took full advantage of that, and it was my first time actually seeing myself on a green screen. And of course I chose the severe weather. They had like some sort of, linear style storm moving through the Lake Champlain region, and they had video of lightning hitting the lake and stuff like that, and I was standing in front of this green screen talking about it, and I don't even know what I was rambling on about, but I think I was kind of getting along the line that we had storm chasers out there, because at that period of time, Storm Chasers was beginning to air the first 1 or 2 seasons, probably around 2006, 2007, if I had to guess, given the age I was watching this video back the other day in preparation for this podcast. So yeah, I would probably say around 2007 if I had to guess, because I was probably about 8 or 9 years old. So given that, I was rambling on about Storm Chasers. So it wasn't until the Discovery Channel Storm Chasers TV show that I realized that people were actually going out and watching weather and traveling across the country just to see tornadoes and supercell thunderstorms. So it was really cool to actually kind of start to understand that you don't have to be a meteorologist in order to appreciate and experience Mother Nature in these fantastic ways. Continuing, as I got a little bit older, I had this idea of eventually maybe going into school as a meteorologist, but at the same time, I was also really into engineering. And I think I was really torn between whether or not I wanted to do meteorology or engineering. So once I got a little bit older, when the Storm Chasers seasons progressed, they eventually introduced Tim Samaras and Twistex onto the team, and I really liked how I think I was really drawn to his professional factor. I've always kind of maybe acted a little older for my age, I would say. I always was at family parties wanting to hang out with the adults more than like my cousins and stuff, because I felt I was always watching TV shows and listening to medias that were above my age range in terms of, I was really into like the science and histories and stuff. So I was very versed for a young elementary going on middle school kid. So, I was always drawn to Tim Samaras' professionalism, and it struck to me the fact that he was an engineer. And not that I fully understood what an engineer was at the time, but it felt as though that, this is something that's right up my alley. Someone that likes building with things, especially at me as a young age, being a kid that loved Legos and that kind of stuff. So it made sense that this was not a character, but someone in the show that I could really idolize. So I began to idolize Tim Samaras as he was an engineer out in this field of meteorologists and going out there and conducting research on tornadoes, which was something that was always really kind of fascinating to me, the phenomena of tornadoes and how exactly you can study something that is such a extreme environment. By the time I got to middle school, I was kind of, doing a little bit of everything, and I still had the passion for weather, but maybe I wasn't pursuing it as much as I was as a young kid. Towards the end of 6th grade, it was the beginning summer weeks of 2011, or late spring, I should say, because it wasn't quite the summer solstice yet. But school was coming towards a close, and it was kind of in a getting ready for the summer. The Bruins were advancing in the Stanley Cup playoffs at the time, and life was going pretty great. on June 1st, 2011, continuing, it was a Wednesday, if I'm not mistaken, and it was a very hot day, very hot, humid day, and I came home from school that day, and I had a Little League baseball game on the south side of my hometown of West Springfield, in the Merrick section of West Springfield. And we're driving down to my baseball game. It is around 4:30 p.m. or so. I'm in the front seat of my mom's 2004 Ford Windstar. And as we're driving to my baseball game, there's clearly, a thunderstorm brewing, and we're continuing down the road, paralleling the Connecticut River, when we begin to see stuff getting kicked up well to our south, probably a couple miles to our south. And right before we rounded a corner, it just seemed very weird to me, but we continued on. And then eventually, once we rounded this corner of trees to a more open view of the Springfield skyline in the south side of West Springfield, because there was a little bit of a hill, so we had a kind of maybe a 30-foot elevation difference from the rest of the surrounding terrain. So we had a pretty good open view of the Connecticut River, the Springfield skyline from a couple miles away, where this area is relatively flat, obviously, because it's the bottom of a valley. We rounded this corner around the last pocket of trees on the east side of the road facing south to see the southern end of West Springfield, where the Memorial Bridge is, and there's clearly a debris circulation going across the ground and up in the sky. There's stuff being lofted, and now looking back on it, a very clear, pronounced mesocyclone with a condensing tornado. And at this point in time, the tornado was already on the ground for a good period of time as it touched down probably about 10 minutes earlier in Westfield, but it was still in that developmental stage, becoming a fully condensed tornado. Obviously, I realized what it was at the time, being a well-versed fanatic, but everyone on the highway was stopped, and as we're watching this storm move across the rest of the southern part of West Springfield, and Springfield is separated from West Springfield by the Connecticut River here in western Massachusetts. And we watched as the tornado crossed the river, going over the Memorial Bridge and pulling up the water with it, and all the debris still whirling around the main circulation. And as it marched into downtown Springfield, it goes behind the Springfield skyline from our vantage point, because we were north of the tornado, obviously, and we were looking south at it. And as it went behind the Springfield skyline, it got tougher to see, and it began pouring around us. And looking back on it, we were, hook slicing essentially from our vantage point. So we ultimately still continued on to the baseball field. And there was a ton of traffic, a ton of power lines down just south of the field, because the tornado path was no more than probably about, maybe a half mile from where the baseball field was. Obviously, the game was canceled at that point, but locals were like, yeah, we just had a tornado come through. And I kind of knew that to myself at the time, but I think there was... we just went there. I'm not sure why we still continued on, to be completely honest. I don't think we really realized the gravity of the situation at the time. But we continued down to the baseball field, like I said, and there were trees down and limbs down. And what amazed me the most was along the whole outfield. I was walking around out in the outfield, and all the grass was flat. And it was all pushed down, and I thought it was the craziest thing, because I had never seen anything like that, and I had never seen wind really manipulate something on the ground to that extent. I've seen trees blown over and stuff like that, but never had I seen the grass being pushed over. And I had my iPod Touch at the time, I don't even remember what generation it was, but it was like the first iPod Touch that had like the apps and stuff on it. So it was like almost like an iPhone. And I was out there recording video. Little did I know, at the edge of the outfield, there were a bunch of trees down and down power lines. And next thing you know, my mom starts screaming at me from across the baseball field to get back there. But I think I was in such a trance that it was my first time really seeing damage from a tornado. Little did I know, the tornado really didn't pass there. It was more to the south. And West Springfield ultimately got hit pretty hard, and there were 2 fatalities within the town, not far from where I was on that baseball field there. Granted, we were well out of the path when it had actually passed, but I don't think we really realized the gravity of the situation, because I think we figured that, there was a couple trees down and that would be that. Obviously, this tornado went on to churn for another 35 miles, going for about 40 miles in total throughout western Massachusetts, making it all the way into Worcester County, which is the central part of Massachusetts. So this was a long-tracked, violent EF3, almost EF4 tornado that was on the ground for an hour and 10 minutes with winds of 160 to 165 miles per hour, if I'm not mistaken. But it was a historic tornado for New England standards. And being able to witness that felt as though it was almost a sign. School was canceled for the next couple of days, and then eventually I went back into school. I think Thursday and Friday were canceled, and then we went back on Monday. And everyone was telling their stories about the tornado, and it was bothering me that everyone really didn't really know how tornadoes worked, and I was the most well-versed when it came to that. So I was like trying to correct people, and instantly I became kind of like the weather geek. And not that people were making fun of me for it, but I definitely got my fair share of, teasing because of it. But nonetheless, this day, June 1st, 2011, easily became the most impactful day in my life, as I witnessed a historic tornado as someone who had been enamored by tornadoes in their youth. So it seemed like a natural thing for me as to kind of classify it as a sign from the heavens above or something like that to pursue this idea of researching weather and continuing with it. I continued through middle school, and in May of 2013 I was in 8th grade, finishing up my 8th grade year, and I had a science project that was kind of an engineering-based project, and I decided to build a wind turbine. So I basically cannibalized a motor out of a broken weed whacker that we had lying around the garage, and used that to basically show that we can use wind power to generate electricity. So we basically used that DC motor that the weed whacker had to illustrate that you can generate voltage, so on and so forth. The day before I presented the project in school, I had seen an article, or someone told me, I'm not sure how exactly I found out, if it was one of my parents, or I ended up finding out just through, social media was still in its infancy. I don't even think I was on Twitter yet. I don't think I joined Twitter until 2000. Oh, maybe I did join it in 2013. I'll have to check my Twitter profile, but I think I joined Twitter in January 2013, so midway through my 8th grade year. And nonetheless, I have the Discovery Channel followed. And the day before the project was going to be presented at like the science fair, something like that, I had seen that Tim Samaras, Paul Samaras, and Carl Jung had passed away in the El Reno tornado. And that hit me like a ton of bricks, seeing that he was my idol, and someone that I really looked up to. So I decided to dedicate my project to Tim Samaras when I presented it, because him being an engineer that studied the weather, and it seemed only fitting that I had built a wind turbine, something that he was enamored by, just at a much more extreme level than just a basic wind turbine. But nonetheless, I felt like this little engineering project I should have dedicated to him, so I did. And in that moment, I realized that there was going to be a gap in the field because he was such an innovator with his research methods, kind of following this twister approach of putting probes in the path of tornadoes. So I figured, someone that's that pioneering in actually being able to successfully deploy probes into tornadoes, that, there's going to be a need for maybe some more field researchers and engineers that can develop these things. So that's when I kind of slowly formulated this idea going into high school that maybe I should pursue engineering as a means of contributing to the field of meteorology, since I felt as though that there were enough meteorologists out there. So I should have been able to kind of be the future in terms of engineers doing research on severe weather. Fast forward through high school, I graduate and ultimately decide to do mechanical engineering as my major. Between the schools I was applying to, I ended up deciding to go to Quinnipiac University in Hamden, Connecticut. I went to their admitted students day, and there were professors there that I met and really connected with when I went down there. And these professors really drove home to me that it's a really small classroom environment, which I personally really like to see. It's a fresh facility, so all new manufacturing labs and all sorts of stuff like that. But not only that, but that they're very open to ideas, and that the professors there are very driven on teaching and helping students kind of figure out their career path and what they want to do, versus the professors kind of being self-absorbed in their own research, which is something that I really was interested in, especially being having this idea of wanting to do meteorology-based engineering. So trying to do, weather sensors and stuff like that as in terms of my engineering career. By the time I started at Quinnipiac University, I was in a class called First Year Seminar, which was a introductory class for freshmen, kind of teaching them how to do research and getting them acclimated to university life in terms of academics and study habits and stuff like that. It was something that all freshmen were required to do, but I had a really cool professor that was really passionate about the course, whereas most kind of just blew it off because it wasn't like a actual course that they really cared about and taught. But since he was one of the key members of making this first year seminar program, he was very enthusiastic about the class and always had a lot of energy, and actually made it really enjoyable to go to. Especially, being a young freshman kid, you don't really care about class and stuff like that, especially right off the bat when you're not in any of your real disciplines yet. You're kind of just going through your UC courses almost. So he made it a really entertaining class to go to, and what we had to do was this guiding question, which kind of shaped our career path in terms of Quinnipiac University and going through the 4 years. We kind of had to reflect a lot on this guiding question. So he told us to do something that we were passionate about. So I figured this guiding question thing, given his kind of enthusiasm about it, I figured I should actually take it seriously and, use it as a platform to kind of figure out how I want to do this whole weather research thing through engineering. So I decided to come up with the question, how can we better understand weather in order to save more lives? And I used that question to kind of come up with this whole first year seminar project. I ended up making a video about it and writing a research paper on it, kind of laying out the problem and potential ways that I can shape my career around it in order to contribute to answering that kind of question. And it drew a lot of attention from the people, since we had to give it in a presentation kind of format. So I used the video and then gave a little bit of a presentation. Most people, they didn't take the question too seriously, so most people weren't really, at least the faculty there that were attending the presentations weren't really impressed by what was happening. But they clearly saw that I was really passionate about my topic, so a lot of them were talking to me after the fact, one of which was an engineering professor that I had met at Admitted Students Day the year prior. And he was really interested by this, and he said, if you ever want to do something in terms of, like an engineering project, let me know, and I'd be more than happy to be an advisor for you. So I kept that in mind and decided to, keep his contact information and all that. He eventually went on to be a professor for multiple classes in engineering, so, I ended up getting to know him quite well. But going out of my freshman year, I had just gone home and was looking forward to the Northeast Chase season. And it didn't take long for it to get exciting. On May 15th, 2018, we had a moderate risk day in New England, centralized around Western Massachusetts, so my home area, and northwestern Connecticut, a little bit of eastern New York, and so that was the general vicinity of the moderate risk, if I'm remembering the SPC map correctly. So I figured, this is a guaranteed chase day. And at this time, my brother had yet to go chasing with me. I used to just solo chase for 2016, 2017 when I got my license. So I got my license in the beginning of 2016, so I was able to chase the 2016 season and the 2017 season. But I didn't take it that seriously until the 2018 season. That's when I really started going crazy with it, because my brother was able to drive now. So he was able to be the driver, where I can do the navigating and the shooting with the cameras and stuff like that. So it made the multitasking side of things a lot easier, because obviously driving is very dangerous when you start bringing into looking at radar and navigating and trying to shoot cameras. It's just it's a recipe for disaster, especially for a young driver. So I really advocate for people chasing in groups or with more than one person in the car, so you can delegate tasks away from the driver, so the driver just has to focus on driving. So I know there's plenty of solo chasers out there, but this is something that I preach since doing that. So May 15th, 2018 was our first chase day as a team. And boy, did that was that a learning lesson. We decided to go for northwestern Connecticut, and at the time I was still trying to figure out this whole northeastern chasing thing. And one of the rules of thumb with northeastern chasing is that trees are a menace. Trees everywhere, terrain, road networks, and population centers make everything when it comes to northeast chasing difficult. And May 15th, 2018 was no exception. Northwestern Connecticut is very, very densely wooded. Not a lot of fields and stuff that we usually try to find in the Northeast that you can use for, spotting out the storm and stuff. So we ended up in Barkhamsted, Connecticut, with a line of supercells approaching, kind of marching their way directly east, slowly moving along, and then eventually going tornado warned far west of us. But these supercells continued to our east. And then we decided to kind of get in position for this one supercell in Barkhamsted. And then I think we adjusted slightly to the southwest to Winstead, because we weren't sure if it was going to dissipate or line out or anything like that. So we decided to continue on. And get a little bit closer just in case if this thing doesn't continue to be tornado warned. So that's what we did. We went to Winsted, Connecticut. Ultimately, we ended up getting caught on a road. I don't remember the road off the top of my head, but it was a north-south road, and there were no east-west options off of it for a good period of time. And where we were and what I was able to see on radar was able to tell me enough that we were not in a good spot, and I was unable to make out any of the visual features on the storms. I was unable to kind of figure out where the updraft was, and it was just a recipe for disaster, as this was definitely, that I can think of, my first proper supercell that I had ever chased. And I'd watched and did enough research on my own to understand what the dangers were and what the best thing to do was. So given where we were probably north of the tornado at the time, as it was just to our southwest on this road. I ultimately made the decision to continue north because I did not want to risk getting overran by the tornado or trying to run across the tornado's path. I at least had the common sense to do that. And it was a very tense couple of minutes, but we bailed north into the hail core of the storm, where we were, we got some of the largest hail we had seen, even to this day in the Northeast, funnily enough, which was probably around golf ball size hail in northwestern Connecticut, just north of Winsted. And sure enough, where we were, there we could have very easily found ourselves in the tornadic circulation of the Winsted EF1 tornado, which was one of the many tornadoes that touched down that day during this northeastern tornado outbreak. Now, I mentioned earlier that my school that I was educated at for mechanical engineering was Quinnipiac University, which is down in Hamden, Connecticut, just down the road from me in West Springfield, Massachusetts. So it's probably about an hour 15 drive from home here. So it wasn't like I was like completely local here, but it was close enough to home. Either way, we called it a chase after that because it was pretty rough, and I had some good footage of lightning and stuff before we got swallowed by the supercell. And I'm starting to pull the footage off the SD cards when this line of storms had finally, reached where Hamden, Connecticut was, because the front was kind of oriented at like a, southwest to northeast kind of line. So the northern storms hit, if you're looking like at a town that's directly south of you, it's going to hit the northern town first, and then it's going to take a little while before the southern town gets hit, basically. So the front continued to march on, even though we called it. So we could have realistically went south and probably chased this storm, but I realized that there was a kink in the line, and there was an embedded supercell that went tornado warned over Hamden. And I thought it was funny that, I was back home editing footage, and sure enough, on social media, I started seeing some crazy stuff from people that were still down there at school, since I had a couple of my friends who were athletes at the school were still down there because their seasons hadn't ended yet. We had finals the previous week, so most everyone was home except for a couple of people. But I saw someone on their Snapchat story, I wish I screen recorded it or took a snapshot or something, but this ridiculous mesocyclone over York Hill, which is the one of the residential campuses off of main campus in Hamden, Connecticut for Quinnipiac, and it's on top of a mountain, basically, paralleling Sleeping Giant State Park, if you're aware, or if you know the area. So I saw this crazy Snapchat video of this wicked mesocyclone, absolutely rain-wrapped at the base, and they called it a tornado right then and there on their story, and I thought, oh, okay. And then they moved. I checked the next part of the story, and it was just absolute like I clearly could tell they were in the RFD of the storm. And hindsight 2020, looking back on it, the tornado had just ended up dissipating not long after ended up hitting Sleeping Giant State Park, which is just to the northeast of York Hill. So looking back on the event and seeing the damage path after, it made perfect sense that they were definitely in the RFD, and the trees were coming down all around them, and it was the craziest Snapchat video I had seen. And I was like, holy crap, I think my university just got hit by a tornado. And sure enough, National Weather Service New York says we're aware of a few key areas where we're going to do surveys tomorrow, and we're going to be investigating them, and one of them was Hamden, Connecticut. And they ultimately confirmed an EF1 tornado the next day. But I had seen what had happened there, and I figured I'd go down for myself to see what kind of damage there was. So I got up at like 5 the next morning to drive down to Quinnipiac to kind of see what the damage was on campus. And everything was roped off, so I parked my car a little bit down the road, and I walked towards campus, and nobody stopped me, which is kind of surprising, but the Pine Grove, which is on the western side of the main campus of Quinnipiac, was completely decimated. All of these real tall, 100, 120-foot pine trees had all been snapped. And I took videos of it. I had my drone up, and I was taking all these aerial footage of Quinnipiac University and surrounding Hamden, documenting the tornado damage. Went back home, uploaded it to YouTube, and before I know it, they were easily the most viewed videos on my personal YouTube channel at the time. I still have the channel, but I think they're still the most popular videos on my YouTube channel. And I was kind of blown away, and I was getting news networks, and the university was reaching out to me, wanting to do stuff for news stories, and it was very overwhelming. And a lot of people that I knew from the university, I was getting emails from professors and stuff I was getting emails from people I had never met before that were amazed by this footage. So I now had an experience where my hometown was hit by a tornado, and now my college was hit by a tornado. So I figured this was now a point for me to, maybe really consider doing something about this. So it is now in this point in time where I decided to come up with June 1st. And June 1st, I ended up naming it, obviously, after the June 1st tornado. And I just spelt out first instead of doing 1ST or whatever for the logo. And I decided to call it June 1st Severe Weather Research to drive home the point that I want to use engineering as a means of understanding severe weather. So that's what I did. And I created June 1st Severe Weather Research, and I started doing the chasing side of things for the rest of 2018 as the means of kind of just using it as a platform to kind of get things going. I didn't really know how I was going to do the engineering part yet. And that's where that professor that I had met at the FYS, first year seminar session or presentations, that's where that came in. I go through my sophomore year and I find out about a program at Quinnipiac where you can do independent research. So if you have a research idea or something along the lines of that, you can write a proposal for a grant proposal, and with the backing of an academic advisor, then you can use that to basically get funded to do your own research project throughout the summer. So they treat it almost like an internship at the end of the day. You use the summer to kind of, go about your research methods. So I reached out to my professor, and he was behind it. He was very confused about what I wanted to do, because trying to explain that you want to do research on tornadoes via engineering methods seems like a crazy idea, obviously, right off the bat. So I had a couple of office hour sessions with him, and kind of explained what I wanted to do, and that I had it all kind of thought out. he nonetheless agreed to be my academic advisor for it, which I am forever grateful for. And the summer of 2019, I chased, and when I wasn't chasing, I was working on this research project where I developed a proof of concept tornado probe, which would go into supercell thunderstorms and gather locational and atmospheric data to ultimately study tornadoes. And when I started developing this thing, which was at the beginning of May, I had come up with this idea, and I started working with Arduinos, and it was on May 20th, 2019. Maybe it was a couple days later. I don't remember the exact day. Whatever the day the Lawrence EF4 in Kansas was, I'm working on the project with this tornado probe idea, and Reed Timmer and the Dominator team successfully deployed on the Lawrence EF4, and I was kind of disheartened for a hot second there because I was like, no, I didn't realize Reed was doing this at the time. I wasn't very involved on WX Twitter yet, so I didn't realize this was a big thing at the moment, and it kind of disheartened me in the middle of my project. So I was like, what am I going to do now? So I reached out to, I don't know if I reached out to Reed at first, but I definitely reached out to Mark at Chase and Spin, who does a lot of the engineering work. And I explained what my project was, and I congratulated him on their first successful deployment. And he basically said that, don't let our success, shy you away from you continuing your work, which was something I needed to hear, and it allowed me to finish the project and present it. And all the academic board members for this independent research thing really liked my presentation, and they really liked the idea. And my engineering academic advisor ultimately said that I can do this as my senior design project. So that's exactly what I did. I had a team of fellow mechanical engineers during my senior year to refine the idea a little bit more and develop a UAV for deploying these things. So we built a giant 6-foot wingspan flying drone to drop sensor packages, and we figured out ways of streaming data back and doing live visuals using MATLAB and data collection methods, and kind of really refine the idea into a full-blown system rather than just the single probe. And that's where the work of June 1st, the principal work of June 1st, really came from, was from the Quinnipiac FYS question, and eventually developing it into an independent research project, and then eventually a senior design project. Now, I graduated in the class of 2021, so I just finished up this not too long ago, and I am just starting out my career as a young mechanical engineer, working, not doing this full-time, but the goal of June 1st is to eventually make it a career and to make it a full-time career for me. So I figured that I wanted to start a podcast for June 1st to kind of give a platform for people in the weather community to share their knowledge, their stories, and kind of understand their inner workings and what their passions are within the weather community and what they want to do with their careers in terms of storm chasing. So I figured this would be a perfect place to kind of do that and, really get an understanding of who there are for characters out there in our community. Once this pilot episode airs, I'm going to be reaching out to a couple people that I know well within the storm chasing community, and hopefully bringing them on board this podcast to kind of bring them in and not necessarily interview them with, given scripted questions, but kind of just to have a general conversation with them and let the natural flow of the conversation kind of dictate what we talk about and how they feel about different weather events and what their passions are within the community, given their expertise, whether it be photographers or videographers or researchers. Hopefully, we'll be able to use this platform to really get a true understanding of the people that are in our little weather community out there. So thank you again for joining me and hearing kind of where I came from and getting a little bit of an understanding as me, to see where my background is. So in future episodes, you kind of know where I'm coming from and where my understanding lies in terms of what I do in terms of weather. So hopefully we'll be able to have a couple guests on in the relatively near future. In the meantime, if you'd like to follow June 1st, go onto YouTube and search up June 1st. It should be the first channel recommendation that comes up. There might be a couple of random videos that come up before that, but you can't miss our black Twister logo. Or it's a black and white Twister logo, so look out for that. That is our June 1st YouTube channel. Please subscribe to that. And if you are at all interested in following what June 1st does or what my weather takes and chasing activity is, you can go on to Twitter and follow me at Ethan Moriarty. My actual handle is actually eMoriartyWX on Twitter. And then the June 1st Twitter, which has a lot of the research side of things in terms of engineering, that is at June 1st WX. Where the first is spelt out. It is not one ST, it is FIRST. So you can follow me at eMoriartyWX or June 1st WX. Thank you for tuning in, and I hope that you join us for the next June 1st Severe Weather Research Podcast. Thank you.